Sorry about the delay. The little unmute button was covered up by other things that I have going on here. All right. Well, we would like to extend an especially warm welcome to those of you who are here for the first time. We're so glad that you are here. Lori is dropping our connection card into the chat box if you'd like to complete that and connect to our community. This caring, supportive community has a pastoral care committee who works closely with our minister to provide support, care, and a listening ear. Please fill out the pastoral care card being dropped in the chat box if you would like the care team and/or Reverend Laura to reach out to you. There is also a link on our website. Our online services are intergenerational, and we have a religious exploration program that is resuming activities for all age levels. Those of you who have signed up should have received emails from our DRE, Rob Carlson, and Assistant DRE, Grace Burns, with details. If you are new to the program or didn't receive the emails and thought you should, please reach out to Rob. His contact info should appear in the chat box as well. There's so much happening here at SVUUS, and the Happenings weekly newsletter is a concise, up-to-the-minute way to stay connected. Lori Quigley's email is now in the chat box. Yes, excellent. If you'd like to reach out to her to receive Happenings. We're also active on Facebook and have an event calendar on our website. So there are so many ways to connect in the digital space with our community. Okay, so I'm going to start into announcements, and the first thing that I want to talk about, just really briefly, and we'll probably discuss it a little bit more later. If you missed Happenings newsletter this week, Reverend Laura had a very nice message about a break-in that happened at the church. So if you didn't know already, now you know we had a break-in. And that is one of the impetuses for us to be doing Zoom worship this week. It was very disruptive to our community. And that paired with the continued and still increasing threat of COVID-19, the Delta variant, and also the variable weather that, it just all adds up to, we're going to be in Zoom worship until at least October 17th. And for those of you who did show up to the church this morning and made it back here, thank you so much. And I apologize that, it didn't get out to you. It was sent out over all of our digital channels. I'm sure there's a little bit more that we could have done to make that a little more seamless for you. So on that, I want to say from a personal announcement that we have multiple openings on worship-related teams. These are really important roles, whether we're on Zoom or not. And it's been very difficult when we're not in person to offer this opportunity to people. So if you want to just ramble on like me during service, and that's great. If you just want to do like a small reading or be Lori and just drop things in the chat box, right? Those are all great opportunities to get involved, and we welcome any of that. And so if you are interested in that at all, just testing the waters, being super involved, want to perform, all those sorts of things, please reach out to somebody, whether it's Reverend Laura, whether it's me. You have a couple of email addresses in the chat box that you could reach out to. One of us can certainly get you connected and going in the right direction. All right, so to not make this a service of announcements, please see the Happening newsletter for other important upcoming events and needs, like tonight's Meal for Homeless Youth, which I believe still needs some volunteers, and this coming Saturday's Women's March, both super important things that I don't have the time right now to go into the details. So check out that newsletter. Also available, I believe, on the website. All right. So let's now take a moment to share the warmth of community. We'll say hello to one another and then say our chalice lighting words together. They will be in the chat box. If you have a candle or chalice, please light it when we say those words in a moment. But first, please unmute yourselves and greet one another verbally or in the chat box.
Hi, everyone.
Good morning.
Hello. Morning.
Hello. It's great to see all of you.
Nice to see you guys.
Morning.
Morning.
Hello.
Hello, Lori. You're muted.
Who are the people that were in the choir?
Good morning.
What,
I'm not
Those
really.
nameless people
what
in the
individuals
quartet.
were in the choir? Those young people.
Gallery. Yes.
They were great.
Our choir members today, we have Isabel, Mara, Matthew, and William from the University of Utah.
Nice.
Yay, choir.
Thank you for coming. Cool.
All right. So without further ado, you can stay unmuted and we can say our chalice lighting words together. I've got this amazing candle chalice. And let us light our chalices. We invite you to stand. We invite you to stand in body, mind, or spirit as we say our chalice lighting words. And you can use our actions if you want and you know them. So we light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of
truth, and for the
Energy of action.
Good morning. I'm Kathleen Luck, and I am a member of the Board of Trustees here at South Valley UU Society. Come, come, whoever you are welcome here. No matter your age, your size, the color of your eyes, your hair, your skin, you are welcome here. No matter your gender, whom you love, how you speak, or whatever your abilities, you are welcome here. You are welcome here, whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears in your eyes. You are welcome here. No matter what you have experienced in the past, no matter what awaits you in the future, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God all of the time, or some of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. This is a community of open hearts, of open minds, loving hearts, and willing hands. You are welcome here at South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society.
So for our call to worship this morning, come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, idolater, worship of fire. Come, even though you have broken your vows 1,000 times. Come, and yet again come. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Those words sound a bit familiar, right? Inviting, but certainly more judgy. And yes, more religious. We used some ages ago wove Rumi's words into a catchy song that aligns with our ideals, for better or for worse. If he were still alive today, the transcendentalist Persian Sufi mystic poet would have turned 814 this week. That's a fun fact that you can share with your friends at the bar in the library. I can only imagine what he'd look like at 814, but it probably wouldn't be pretty. I pointed out our human nature to reshape what we attribute to our idols, not to throw our UU forebears under the bus, but to remind us. We, well, I at least, hold Rumi up as this amazing god of a poet philosopher, an idol perhaps. Someone that hangs out in the background of our minds, informing us of a more inclusive, more thoughtful past. In doing a bit of research for today, I mostly found lists of 300 Rumi quotes to live by, or similar. Some paired with enlightened seeming images. 100% of these are ripped from their context, from a much larger translated work. And I'd wager that nearly all of these are paraphrases of that translation. So that's human nature. It's what we do. And it's not necessarily good or bad. It is just how it is. So come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, wanderer, idolater, worshiper of fire. Do we know what this implied welcoming of diversity is tied to? Now, don't get me wrong, it's a marvelous notion and well used across many faith communities. Regardless, there's no reason to call into question the overall interpretation of Rumi's meticulously translated works. I just wanted to point out when we can be a little bit more aware. So let's explore a truly prescient theme from Rumi's works, the interplay of ground and sky. This is especially important near the fast-changing equinox and in our busier than ever, tragically still in pandemic lives, with high-flying ideals, idols, needs, and wants. How can we find deeper truth and grounding, balance and breath? Come, let's worship together this morning. I believe we will now enter into our time of all ages. So Rob, if you don't mind unmuting and sharing your gifts.
Good morning, friends. Our story this morning comes from a 16-year-old Indigenous author named Serena Bouvier. She's from British Columbia. And before I begin, I just want to read a brief statement from her about this story entitled Changes. This story grew on its own in my head. All I did was write it out. I had the idea of some dialogue between Raven and Coyote about their place in a more modern world. I've always liked reading about trickster archetypes, and Raven is my favorite. Coyote was also fascinating as a character, and I was curious about how the two of them would cope with all of the changes that have happened in the last couple hundred years. This short story was partially inspired by Neil Gaiman's Sandman comics and his novel American Gods. Changes. The coyote slinks through the darkened city, listening intently to the distant roar of traffic. The air stinks of oil and rust and spare. A speckled cat, startled by the coyote's unfamiliar presence, yowls at the hidden moon. The coyote continues on, searching for something or someone. Eventually, he comes upon a small patch of wilted greenery, a park. It's small and hemmed in by sad, stunted trees. But there is life there. And so the coyote settles down next to a scarred park bench to wait. It doesn't have to wait long, for with a flutter of wings, a large blackbird settles on the bench, keen eyes looking mischievously at the coyote. The coyote makes a sound like the wind blowing through the grass, a world-weary sigh. "Hello, old friend," says the large bird, peering down from the bench. At this angle, the coyote could easily be mistaken for a skinny, somewhat bedraggled dog. The coyote stares at the bird, head cocked slightly. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" The bird has the appearance of a raven or crow, only larger. Its iridescent wings reflect light like oil on pavement. "You're a lot less chatty than I remember," observed the raven, with a human-like expression of puzzlement upon his feathered face. "Not much to talk about, is there?" The coyote's voice is raspy and quiet, and the raven has to concentrate to make sense of the soft words. "I don't know what you mean." A resentful silence greeted the raven's huffy exclamation. "It's not as if the world has stopped turning." "That's the problem," the coyote mumbles. "Lots of changes, lots of big new things, and lots of insignificant old things get lost along the way to progress." The coyote's voice becomes louder and angrier. "No one cares about the stories anymore. No one listens to the old words, and there aren't many who can remember what it was like before the iron came. There is no one left to tell the stories, and the ones like you and I who get left behind have no one to hear us. It's a different world, a changed world, and I want it to go back to the way it was before, when we were still respected and knew our names." The raven listens impatiently to the coyote's speech, which has turned into a rant by this point. "Respect? What do you need respect for? You can't eat respect. You can't watch respect, do amazing things. You can't hold it or make beautiful things from it. Respect is an empty word, an idea, and there's nothing that needs it. But it's all we have left now." No, that's not true at all. There are all kinds of interesting things in the world, and different things aren't any less valuable than familiar things. Respect doesn't mean anything if there's nothing there to make it something? I think I just confused myself with my own words. How remarkable is that? The coyote doesn't answer, only looks at the raven angrily, wanting an answer. The raven tries again. I mean, respect is just a concept. There are plenty of other things in this world that make important for yourself. Lots of stuff like fish and shiny things and sweet pieces of bread that fall from a child's hand at a festival, and tales told around a campfire where the leaping flames are the only things keeping the unknown darkness at bay, and songs that seem to scream at the sky, asking why? 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 Why don't you concentrate on the things that you can see and hear and taste, and the things that make you happy instead of hollow words that never really mean anything to begin with? It meant something to me, Coyote said. Well, there's your problem then, said the raven. You are stuck in the past, friend. You've got to live in the moment. Okay, the world's a different place from what it was a couple hundred years ago. So what? There are still people on the earth, and they still can make beautiful, real, heart-achingly loving things. They might wear different things and speak different words. But in the end, it's all the same story, told and retold a billion times, a billion different ways. What is the story? The coyote's voice says in a challenging, surly growl. The raven scoffs, a harsh sound that ricochets off the scraggly trees guarding the park. Friend, if I have to tell you that, you're less of an individual than I thought you were. None of us are what we once were, muttered Coyote. Raven said, no more of that talk. Yes, you're right. We've all suffered plenty these last few years. Lots of knowledge has been lost, and we may never replace it. But the prairie grass blowing in the wind and the ocean surf crashing have stayed the same. People still sing and draw and laugh and cry and tell stories. And while the stories they tell might be different from what you're used to, all stories are made up of the same ideas in the end. While we still have those things, there is hope. There has always been hope. We may be all that's left of the old beliefs, but that doesn't mean we can't watch the new things happen. We have a place in this world regardless of what you and your silly defeatist attitude think. How dare you give up on everything? How dare you? The coyote stares at the ground, silently contemplating its response. Well, you might have a point. The raven preens, looking smug. Of course I have a point. I'm me. I'm the one who stole the stars and gave them to the world. I'm the one whose parents warned their children about. And I am the one they told stories about, as are you. I was, but I don't know where I fit in anymore, the coyote says remorsefully. Stop that self-pitying, says the raven. It's shameful. And don't worry, there are still plenty of nooks and crannies for a clever trickster to take advantage of. We fit into the in-between places and the forgotten places. Goodness knows that there are more than enough of those nowadays. We'll be okay. You just have to be clever. Coyote gives a toothy, if somewhat forced grin. I've got that angle covered. Well, thank you for the advice, friend. You've given my existence a bit more meaning, which is more than I had before I found you. I'll be on my way now. The raven nods, already bored with the conversation. See you around. I have fish to catch. Wait, the coyote says, I have a question. We are just stories. We don't eat. So why do you fish? The raven winks. Why not? After all, we are only just stories and shadows. So we may as well enjoy the time we have in this world. And with a swirl of smoke, the raven was gone. The coyote lays there for a while, thinking. It thinks about the world and its people. He rages to himself. He mourns for a while. For the first time in a long time, he considers the future. The sun rises, and Coyote hears the sound of tall grass blowing in the wind.
When you see the storm is coming, see the lightning part the skies. It's too late to run, there's terror in your eyes. What you do then is remember this old thing you heard me say. It's the sword of youth that's bound to go away. Hold on to someone standing by. Hold on, don't even ask how long or why. Child, hold on to what you know is true. Hold on till you get through. Child, oh child, hold on. When you feel your heart is pounding, fear a devil's at your door. There's no place to hide, you're frozen to the floor. What you do then is you force yourself to wake up and you say, is this dream not me that's bound to go away? Hold on, the night will soon be by. Hold on, until there's nothing left to try. Child, hold on, there's angels on their way. Hold on and hear them say, child, oh child. It doesn't even matter if the danger and the need come from up above or down below, or just come flying at you from across the room. When you see a man who's waiting, but he's jealous and he fears that you've walked through walls he's hid behind for years. What you do then is you tell yourself to wait it out. You say, it's this day, not me, that's bound to go away. Child, hold on. Is this day not you that's bound to go away?
This community, our church and its many ministries are only possible by the gifts that you give of your time, your talent, and your treasure. Many of you pledge monthly to support our work, and for this we are grateful. Your gifts help to ensure that we are able to live our values of love and justice in the world outside. We use Breeze to collect Sunday offerings online, and the link will be in the chat box now. Part of our ministry at South Valley includes sharing our Sunday worship offerings with a charitable organization that aligns with our principles and values. And so your gift today will support the work of South Valley Church and Utah Refugee Connection. The mission of Utah Refugee Connection is to create meaningful connections between refugees, the community, and public and private organizations which support refugees in developing self-sufficient and fulfilling lives. There are approximately 65,000 refugees living in Utah. They come from 40+ countries and speak more than 20 languages. Utah is one of 19 states that are welcoming refugees from Afghanistan over the coming weeks. The Utah Refugee Connection will be helping with that effort, so please give generously.
So as you have a chance, please, as Rob said, give generously. The link is in the chat box. For all that we have received and all that we have found the courage to give, may we be truly thankful. May these gifts be a blessing to South Valley and to Utah Refugee Connection. As we enter a time of meditation and reflection, I want you to feel the ground as best you can. Wherever you are, however you're sitting or standing or laying down or standing on your hands. If you're wearing shoes or socks or gloves and want to remove them to connect more deeply, all the better. Are you inside? Feel free to get up and move outside if you wish. Turn up the volume and take your meditation with you. I'm just going to open the window because that's what I have. Now, if it's safe, close your eyes if you like. Breathe. Taste the sky. Breathe again. Consider it. Consider its weight, its smell. Consider it against other deep, thoughtful breaths you've experienced. Breathe a third time. Use this breath to find a firm center in your mind and body. Consider someone or something you value, hold dear, love. Now, imagine how you might protect and nurture it or them. And breathe. Feel how that grounding strengthens your bond. Now imagine the greatest highs, the most fantastical future for the person or thing you love. Spirit, how grand. And breathe. Still with a mind's eye to the sky. Consider these words of Rumi. Love flows down, the ground submits to the sky and suffers what comes. Is the ground worse for giving in like that? Do not put blankets over the drum, open completely. Let your spirit ear listen to the green dome's passionate murmur. Breathe. And take some time with your thoughts, and the chime will call you to return. Truly take the time that you need to come up from whatever thought process was going on for you. Our reading today is from a it's from a letter to the editor, which is not a usual source, but I suppose it's probably one of our 6 sources, something to do with modern wisdom. And it comes from Bob Spicer, who is a member of our community and truly one of the most thoughtful people that I have had the pleasure to get to know in my time. And I really appreciate the way that he considers and writes. And the title of it is A High Time to Achieve a Cleaner, More Resilient, More Equitable, and More Productive Way of Life. He writes, on a recent day, it was sunny, not too hot, and the sky showed blue. How unusual, given what we've been through. A good moment to take a deep breath and reflect. On August 6th, I really had a shock. The sky was dark with smoke across the valley. I couldn't see the mountains to the west, and I could hardly see the sun. I walked outside that afternoon and nearly choked. The next day, this paper shared that we'd had the worst air in the world right here. Most pollution on August 6th came from the Dixie Fire in Northern California. Extended drought, a warming climate, and likely a lightning strike combined to touch it off. Sadly, at the time of this printing, it's still burning. Nearly 1 million acres torched, but now nearly contained. The whole West shares that warming climate and a widespread historic drought. So take another breath. That fire could have easily started here. I'm grateful for some clear discussion in these pages about our fragile watersheds, about the harm done by burning fossil fuels both here and globally, about impacted fragile ecosystems and communities downwind, and about well-connected business interests that seek short-term profits from toxic, waning industries like oil and coal. Now I hope you'll take us a step further to open serious discussion with wide participation to map out, organize, and help achieve a cleaner, more resilient, more equitable, and more productive way of life. It isn't just a slogan that we need to build back better. There's a lot that we need to straighten out. It's so unusual here to take a breath of fresh air now. It's been so fleeting. Please help us enjoy more days like this. Bob Spicer, Salt Lake City. So there I was, hiking with my dog, a brief respite from a whirlwind of to-dos. And of course, my phone alerts me to an email, something I usually ignore when I'm out in the foothills. But I look at it's from Bob Spicer. While Bob and I spent copious amounts of time together as members of the ministerial search team, I don't often get messages from him. So I stop and read it. And of course, it's the letter that I just read. And at that time, I'm looking out over the valley in the foothills above my house. And, I'm just churning it over. I get home and I responded. And here was what I responded with. Neither of these passages were really meant for spoken voice, but here's what I wrote. Your LTE strikes a perfect chord with me right now. Thank you so much for sharing here and with the wider world. I was noting similar feelings this morning as my daughter, dog, and I walked up to her school. How fresh the air tasted. And then continuing on up into the avenue's foothills. Being able to see mountains, downtown, neighborhoods in detail. The Stansburys in clear view. Utah County mountains only slightly diffuse with morning haze. We used to greatly appreciate the regular gift of these sights, but now it's an utter shock. Your words are moving. While this was a small exchange, it was impactful to me. Take a breath. Touch the sky. Let the ground feel solid underfoot. A great reminder there are many things that we want and a growing impatience that can sometimes pull us into frustration. Bob's gift, his considered, even-handed urging for wider understanding and discussion, leading to ultimate progress, informs this idea of balance between progress and grounding. And our good friend Rumi agrees. This symbiosis between what grounds us and what inspires us appears many times in his writings. From only the heart can you touch the sky. The ground submits to the sky. Is the ground worse for giving in like that? Those are just two of dozens of examples. I don't want to dwell too much on at all on the past 18 months of a pandemic roller coaster. It's well documented and largely understood, but I do want to address the Rumi style elephant in our sanctuary. Service today was planned as outdoor worship in the backyard. It's a glorious morning from what I can tell. And seeing you all in person sounds simply amazing. I want that. I want that so much. Some in our community might actually need this community in person. And I want to make space for that. This feels like a step back. I also have to acknowledge the very real tipping point of our capacity for worship. Outdoor, indoor, Zoom, in a tent, on a boat, on a mountain, in a park. Whatever format and location, each comes with its own sets of restrictions, logistics, person power, and creativity. It's a lot. And we've been experimenting a lot in the past year, and particularly in the last month. In a church, which generally speaking is quite naturally a little c conservative institution, where folks generally expect a sense of familiarity and comfort and safety, we all experienced a bit of a shattering of that sense this week. If you haven't, well, I guess I already spilled the beans. I was going to say, if you haven't read or heard it, the church was broken into this past week. Many items were stolen, but luckily, nothing that can't be replaced that I know of. And we don't believe any personal information was accessed. As Reverend Laura had said, the motive seems to simply find items that can sell quickly. There's much thought and compassion to be offered here. Compassion for staff who had items stolen, or at least greatly disrupted. Compassion for each other and our varying levels of grief over the breach of our sanctum. Even compassion for the offender, who found themselves in a position where the answer to their struggles was theft. It seems unlikely that we'll learn more. So we move forward. But what have we taken from this experience? While it does seem like a step back, I believe it was a much needed wake up, a reset, a grounding, if you allow me to extend the metaphor. Not simply an awakening to the fact that we should improve the security of the building and adhere better to our own security procedures. An awakening to pause, take a breath, and reevaluate. In June, the board enthusiastically supported an in-person reopening in August, which was backed by our COVID task force's recommendation. But by August, COVID hadn't subsided fully, and Delta put those plans to the side. In a matter of a couple of weeks, for the safety of the community, the COVID task force adjusted recommendations based on real-world conditions, and plans were pushed back and changed. Yet still moving forward on a ceaseless march to our ideal. Consider all that happened in that time. New music director, new DRE, Reverend Laura has moved her house, Delta variant has surged in Utah and is expected to continue for more weeks. We've done backyard worship and portable worship at Murray Park. We've canceled outdoor worship due to weather, and we've created policies and procedures to safely move indoors. Beyond that, there have been many personal triumphs and tragedies in our community. Full ICUs and lives ended and others affected by the spread of COVID-19. And then the break-in. Pow! So here we are, taking a breath, getting grounded, letting the air of the sky dig deep and create, recentering on the long view of what we are doing here, so we may reach the sky from our heart centers. Laura said this week, and I hope I'm not going too far, this was not a public statement, but she's on a 40-year journey with us. Praise be that it may be so. Rumi's work resonates over the centuries, and all of this is built on the relationship between the earth and the sky. While Reverend Laura, no doubt, breathlessly in the final throes of moving, is no doubt breathlessly in the final throes of moving, I'll close with her words, with some of her words from this week's happenings, which I did not copy and paste here, so give me just a second. That is a major failure. Because I think that they were just about perfect. She says, there's a phrase often used in my collegial circles that when the going gets tough, we ought to wonder. This is not because we want to escape the difficulty, as tempting as that may be at moments, but because the way forward is only in possibility, in being able to let go again and again of hopes and dreams and well-planned plans that are no longer viable, and back into the present moment, which is of course the only one we can act from. So my friends, let's keep on breathing and letting go. Let's turn to wonder and walk a little slower on this path we are all on together, and trust that underneath it all, we may remain stronger together than we are apart. May it be so. Amen. Will you please join me in singing our closing, or join the our quartet, our musicians, in singing number 289, Creative Love. Our Thanks We Give, performed by the U of U Quartet. The lyrics can be found in the chat box. Thank you for your gift of music this week. Much appreciated. Let us now extinguish our communal chalice. You are invited to unmute yourselves, stand if you wish, and say our chalice extinguishing words together. Those words are in the chat box if you'd like to follow along. All will be unmuted.
Okay.
We extinguish this chalice,
Chalice.
not the warmth,
Not the warmth of
the
community,
light of
the
truth,
light of truth,
nor the
or
energy
the energy of action.
Any of action.
We
We hold each other in our
our
hearts
hearts.
until we meet again.
Now, fathers, now our meeting's over. Fathers, we must part. And if on earth we meet no more, I love you in my heart. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore, and we'll shout forevermore. Now, sisters, our meeting's over. Sisters, we must part. And if on earth we meet no more, I love you in my heart. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore. And we'll shout forevermore. Now that our meeting, now mothers, now our meeting's over. Mothers, we must part. And if on earth we meet no more, I love you in my heart. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore. And we'll shout forevermore. Now, brothers, now our meeting's over. Brothers, we must part. And if on earth we meet no more, I love you. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore. Then we'll land on that shore, and we'll shout forevermore. Then we'll land on that shore, and we'll shout, shout, shout
Thank you to everyone for sharing your gift this morning, and for everyone who joined us for sharing your gift of your presence. But in the rambling of this morning, please take away these three things. Zombie Rumi would be 814 years old this week. Reverend Laura will be with us in 2060. And do this. Simply pause your overbooked lives to breathe. Allow the ground to submit to the sky, so that the passionate murmur of your heart can once again reach for and touch the sky. Go forth, gentle people. And please join us now for some social time.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, it's not much, but.
Somebody thought of me.
Yeah, I told Danny when we were at